But Godzilla, actually, that has been rebooted, and I was surprised. I didn't know they made any headway yet on the movie, but
I was shocked. I mean, I had no idea.
They showed a teaser trailer for it at Comic-Con, and I guess they showed the lizard full on, and people were really excited about it. I think all cheese kind of removed from the prospect of a Godzilla in this.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, he's the director is the guy who did the movie Monsters, and he would be one of the two people that I would give it to. The other, obviously, being Del Toro. I couldn't really imagine, if you're going to do it, those are the two. In the 90s, I would have said Terry Gilliam or Tim Burton. But
wouldn't you have thought, coming off the heels of Independence Day, that Roland Emmerich would have been a good choice? Like, it seemed at the time, I remember people being excited about it.
Oh,
and I remember the preview.
I won't lie to you, Chris. I was too.
Yeah.
Here's the problem.
That preview with the wave, the fisherman and the wave, like, people were really into that preview. I remember people being totally geared up for that movie.
Oh, yeah. And I'm sure I was one of them. And I'll be honest with you, though, it's really hard to do that movie after Spielberg's Jurassic Park.
Yes, I agree.
I really think that's the problem. Is it and I'm not saying Spielberg could have done any wonders with that script handed to him. I mean, there are so many directors attached to that movie over the years. I mean, remember at one time it was going to be Roger Corman doing an American Godzilla in the 80s and it was called It Ate Cleveland was the actual title of the movie. And there were a couple, Jan de Bont was going to do it at one time. Alex Cox, who did Repo Man, wanted to do it at one time. And his idea was so outlandish, although compared to what came. But you're absolutely right. There was so much excitement building up towards that movie, and it just fizzled.
But do you think that it's actually, I was talking about this with a friend of mine last night, that we're talking about the James Bond movies. And we're talking about the change of conception of the cinematic James Bond character with the Daniel Craig movies, and that he's very much like a tortured soul. I mean, you see scenes of him, getting teary-eyed and and just turmoiled and tormented and that kind of thing. And my point about James Bond has always been that I've always liked the unabashed, womanizing, wisecracking James Bond, the suave as hell James Bond. And I said, and it seems to me, I know that there's a Jason Bourne influence that came into play here, but I think more crucially, I think it started with Batman, with Christopher Nolan's conception of Batman, where you take these mainstay characters that have dangerously come close to cheesiness, and you deepen them, you ground them in a more kind of organic reality. And I think that that's happening with, I guess, Godzilla.
I hope not. If you take it too seriously, then, I mean...
Well, the reason Emmerich's didn't work is because they try to play it as a comedy.
Yeah,
they try to play it too goofy.
I mean, look, even after the Roland Emmerich one, the Japanese went back and they made one or two good ones, but then they also made the mistake. They tried to take it too serious. They made it more serious, and it verges on, and it becomes camp. I mean, they messed up too. I would have thought it's funny when they killed off the character 95 because the Americans were going to remake it. That was supposedly going to be, that was it. That was the end of it. And then no one liked the American one, so they went back to the well and they played around with it again. But it's interesting that you bring up Nolan in regards and James Bond. I think, I don't know how good or how bad Skyfall will be, but I think give Christopher Nolan, even though it would be a step down for him, let him do a James Bond movie. It would be the greatest James Bond movie ever made.
Chris and I were talking about this the other night. And Chris, what was your point about Nolan and doing Bond and what they should do with it?
Well, I don't know what exactly. We talked about it for quite a while, but I don't know that the Broccoli family or whomever would allow, they kind of have a tendency to go with directors who aren't auteurs and who aren't, visionary guys. They have a tendency to go with sort of workmen-like directors, and they've turned down, I think, Scorsese, Spielberg, Oliver Stone, all those guys sort of flirted with the idea of doing a James Bond. Some of them, didn't do it for their own reasons, and some of them, I think, didn't do it because the Riccolis wouldn't let them.
Right.
I agree that it would be a step down. It's not something I'm interested in seeing because I like Chris Nolan and I don't like James Bond. And I've always kind of liked Chris Nolan's more original stuff that he does, even more so than the Batman. I like The Prestige and Inception and Memento and Following more than I do the Batman movies, probably.
Right.
So I'm not that interested. Having said that, Jerry's right. If he made it, it would be the best Bond movie of all time.
Yeah, you got a good point there, because Tarantino was supposed to make Casino Royale. I don't know how. But there's no way like a John Woo or Tarantino or Nolan could ever, because you're right. They want you to follow this strict formula, and God forbid that you think outside the box. That's not going to happen, unfortunately, and that's a shame, because I think Casino Royale is one of the best Bond movies in a long time, but it depends
because
how
it's the one that thinks out. Yeah, Casino Royale is beloved by so many people because it does think outside the box, but only very, very slightly. Even that movie doesn't go that far outside the box.
It doesn't go that far. You're right, but it goes far enough that you're like, oh, okay, they're onto something. And then I think that Quantum of Solace's main problem is it just feels like almost an epilogue to that movie. It doesn't feel like a full movie. The more I think about it over the years, it just feels like an epilogue to that film.
Yeah, well, they didn't develop that. I mean, they knew that they were screwed in that movie. They knew they didn't have a script. They didn't develop it at all.
Right.
They were in trouble to make a release date. But, this influence, and, I think it all comes from Nolan's influence in the highly successful Batman movies. Maybe it happened earlier, and I'm just forgetting about it. But, I mean, this influence is also there in a movie that Nolan kind of reconceived in The Man of Steel, the latest Superman movie, apparently. I just saw the teaser trailer of that, and we have a darker Superman. And I've always said Superman is it seems like he'd be the most amazing of all superheroes, but he's the blandest of all superheroes. So I think that Nolan could probably, in his conception of him, do miracles with it.
But you bring up a good point. Superman, there's actually a book that's come out about the history of Superman, and it does say the exact thing that you just said. He is the blandest of superheroes. I mean, there's not much you can really... I mean, it sounds like we're getting another origin story here, in one sense. Okay. I don't know. I mean, it's got a very interesting cast, but I don't know... If you make Superman too dark, you might... I don't know what you can do with Superman, to be honest with you.
I don't either. That's a big question mark. That's what makes me so excited about it.
Yeah, no, I agree with you, yeah.
I didn't know what you could do with Catwoman, but by all accounts...
Don't call her Catwoman.
By all accounts, her character is one of the high points of the new movie.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but Zack Snyder is not Chris Nolan. I know he's producing, but it's not always the same thing, That
Spielberg produces a lot, too. I mean...
Yeah, that's true. I was about to say, produce Transformers, for Christ's sake. But, and the other thing is Superman, like we're saying, what all can you do with it? I think probably that Batman is a much more interesting character than Superman. I know that's just my opinion, but he's human, Superman, go back and watch those movies. They're not that great. I mean, the first one is a good movie. Superman 1 is a good movie. But even that is pretty campy and pretty, it's got a very late 70s feel to it. It's very simplistic. I don't know how much more you can do with it. And I hope I'm wrong, I hope it's a good movie.
I think, actually, I like the first two, but I think what you were saying is very true when you get to the Bryan Singer movie. I think the limitations are there. You see it. There's not much you can really do. I mean,
that was his problem. Bryan Singer was so slavishly loyal to Richard Donner's Superman that he failed to reconceive it for a new generation.
Right.
And I think that that's what is unique about Nolan. That's what he can do. And whether Zack Snyder's directing or not, sure, you could screw it up in the direction, but I mean he and his brother's script or treatment of that whole story will be there. It should be evident.
Well, we'll see.
Hope so.
We'll see what happens. Yeah. I mean, having the Nolans on board is always a good thing. I think we've learned that with these properties more so. I mean, you can't go wrong. I think that's a fair assessment.
So what else has been Django? They aired 8 minutes of footage. Apparently, they still have a few days left of shooting, like 6 days left of shooting on it. The never-ending film shoot. But apparently the movie is going to be very explosive and controversial.
Right.
By its use of language.
Is that news, though? I mean, he always is, right? Like every single thing he does.
Yeah. I mean, I think to a certain degree, yes. It hasn't struck me as controversial in a Passion of the Christ sense or something, but I mean his use of racial epitaphs.
Well, that I think is going to be big time here, given the time period and everything. That's going to be huge, and that will get the Spike Lee. Will probably say, "Do you have to use the N-word that much?"
And apparently, he uses it over 150 times in this movie.
Wait, where did you get the count from? Where did you get that from?
It's on all the articles.
Oh, okay. So, okay. Wow.
Yeah, and Jamie Foxx defended it in the panel, and it's obviously it takes place during types of slavery.
Yeah, pre-Civil War too, mind you. So yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, so that happened.
I've always felt like they didn't say that the N-word enough in Roots. Like if Roots was like seriously, if that movie was like for real, how many times do you think that word would be used in 12 hours of screen time or whatever?
Yeah.
If it was a documentary,
you're right.
It would probably be 1,050. Like it was probably every time that a black person was spoken to at that time, especially a slave in the South. So Tarantino has never shied away from that word. When he was making the movie with no black people, he had that word, all up in it. So.
That was their way of saying hello. Good morning.
Yeah. I don't remember any black guys in Reservoir Dogs, and I feel like they used that word at least 5 times.
Yeah. So what else screened there? It was Iron Man 3. They screened some footage of that, and they revealed Ben Kingsley is the villain in it. Iron Man 3 is a change of direction, if only because it's a change of director. We've gone from Jon Favreau to Shane Black.
And he's another one that can get a good performance out of Downey, so I think that's a step in the right direction, I think.
I think he's probably as good a director as Jon Favreau was when he took over the Iron Man series. I think we give Jon Favreau a little bit more credit right now, but let's not forget he made Cowboys and Aliens, which sucked ass. And I love Jon Favreau's movies. I love Elf, I love Zathura, and I love the Iron Man movies, but Cowboys and Aliens is not a good movie, and it's not Jon Favreau's fault.
It's just a bland story. It's just a bland...
Yeah. So I think that everybody was like, Shane Black, what the hell's he done? Well, he did one movie. He's written a lot of good movies, and he directed one pretty good movie. So I think that's probably on par with what Jon Favreau was doing when he first got the job.
I think you're right, yeah. And I like Zathura, too. That's an underrated movie. So,
it is an underrated movie. It's cute. And Elf is an underrated comedy. I mean,
yes,
that movie... For many, many years, I was always thinking, well, we haven't had a new sort of Christmas movie that everyone watches every year in a long time. Probably the last one was either Christmas Vacation or Scrooged, and then we probably went, close to 20 years without one, and now it's Elf. There are a lot of people who watch Elf every year at Christmas.
It comes on USA like 5 times during Thanksgiving, so
Yeah.
By the way, I forgot to include this quote. This is what Zack Snyder said about Superman at Comic-Con. Superman's pretty awesome, as you know. Superman's a big responsibility, but Superman needed to be reintroduced to a new generation. I thought this was a good chance to do something awesome, and we're doing awesomely, I think.
That sounds like the maker of Sucker Punch.
Yeah, so just keep in mind, Chris Nolan's also involved, so, if that disheartens you, that quote. Also, speaking of bad movies that many people love, Schwarzenegger and Stallone were there with Expendables 2, which I know Jerry and we can't wait for it.
I'm looking forward to it. It's an 80s. It's like the ultimate 80s flashback, love fest. So.
Yeah, but Comic-Con that shows you that Comic-Con has expanded beyond, comic superheroes and that level of geek movie. You know?
True.
Lone Ranger.
The name Comic-Con is actually a little bit ironic now. Like it's kind of like a con for people that like comics, you know. Like,
it's not about comics anymore. It started out as like a comic trade show, but
yeah, it's very ironic. I mean, Comic-Con really started out with like what you see in the opening scene of Chasing Amy, where they're signing the Blunt Man and Chronic books.
That's you're absolutely right, Chris.
A warehouse with comic books and a bunch of no-name, not even Marvel and DC were there, like it was independent comics, and then now it's this whole other thing. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that, because by all accounts, there's a lot of comic stuff there. But what takes the main stage is the studios,
But don't you think here's the thing, though, they need to start, I mean, it's fine, you can sell this stuff, you can definitely sell there. But you need I guess the lesson of Scott Pilgrim and Kick-Ass is you need to sell it, beyond that core. You've got them. They're sold. That crowd is sold on it. You need to go beyond that, though. That's the thing they really need to work on.
Yeah, I think the value of Comic-Con, though, aren't the people in the H Hall that you're presenting to. It's the fact that the news about that reaction has gone out throughout the world instantaneously, And you want a majorly enthusiastic crowd to drive that reaction in that press. And so that's why Comic-Con's an ideal forum.
Exactly. Yeah.
True.
Lone Ranger. They showed Lone Ranger. Now, this is another one of those big-time troubled productions and big-time expensive productions.
Yeah.
Why you spend $250 million on a Lone Ranger movie, I don't know. Could you have made a great Lone Ranger movie at $100 million? I mean,
it's Gore Verbinski. Gore Verbinski has gone over budget with every movie he's made.
Yeah.
Has he really? Yeah. And they allow it because he was attached to the pirate movies,
Well, that's why, yeah. I mean, the pirate movies, you go over budget by $50 million, big deal, you're going to make $900 million.
Right.
But Lone Ranger, I'm not so sure. This is starting to smell a little bit Wild Wild West. And I know
or John Carter, even, I mean.
Yeah. Great cast, though, in it. Actually, if you read the cast, it's really fantastic.
Do you think it was a good idea to make a Lone Ranger movie anyway?
They made one back. Do you remember the one they made back in, 1980?
Was that a good idea?
No. So I don't know if this is a good idea either. You don't have to go back and get everything made. I mean,
you want to know something funny about the Lone Ranger? You know who it's written by? Two of the writers of the script. It's pretty ironic. Ted Elliott and Terry Rossio. You know what other script they wrote? Those same two guys? Godzilla.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
The Emmerich one.
The Roland Emmerich Godzilla was written by
Oh, wow. Okay, well, I'm glad they got work again after that.
Well, they did all the pirate movies, too.
Oh, wow, okay.
Yes, they did. Yes, they did.
Yeah.
Well, hey, all right, so...
Well, I think it might be a better idea to make a Walker Texas Ranger movie than a Lone Ranger movie.
You might be right.
Yeah, I think you're onto something there. I actually think people would go see that. I actually think people would...
They've got an ace in the hole because they've got Johnny Depp, but don't forget that Johnny Depp has made The Secret Window, and he's made, several other movies since the pirate movies, which were, Dark Shadows, which were not, that's not exactly a no-fail ace in the hole. Rum Diary,
I mean, that's the problem. You bring up a very good point that, I mean, I liked the Rum Diary. I thought that was a very good movie, but that's not something that's going to bring them in, though. I mean, Fear and Loathing didn't bring him in either. I mean, so... No,
it didn't. I mean, he's great in those Pirates movies.
Mm-hmm.
But is that one of the most, is that an iconic performance? I don't know. Like, I think people just wanted to see pirate movies, and he was kind of, kooky or whatever. If they had cast, back in 2003 or whatever it was, if they had cast Heath Ledger as Captain Jack Sparrow, I feel like we would have gotten the same trilogy. Like, I feel like we would have, that was kind of on the page for the most part, And I like Johnny Depp. I'm not trying to shit on Johnny Depp. I like him very, very much. But I just don't know that he is what brings people to the theater. I think it was Pirates more than it was,
Right, but it made him a huge, a bankable star, though.
Yes,
I think it would have made Heath Ledger. I think you're right. And whoever played that part, it would have made a big commercial draw.
Yeah.
They showed some of the new Twilight movie there. That's all I got to say about that. They also showed some stuff from Peter Jackson's The Hobbit, but not at the 48 frames per second.
Oh, they did not.
Yeah, they didn't want the press. They didn't want any more press about that, I'm sure.
People are impressed by it. They say, it's definitely, as you would think, keeping in style with the Lord of the Rings trilogy. They showed 12 minutes of footage, so there's a lot of hopes on that Christmas release.
God, Christmas is going to be packed. I know I keep saying that on the show, forgive me, but it's just going to be packed this year.
Yeah. And then Del Toro's Pacific Rim. Del Toro doing it's monsters and what else is like dinosaurs and monsters.
Well, here's the thing. I guess it's monster
aliens
aliens
in big monster suits. Like.
It might be. But he's.
No, it is. Yeah.
Okay, and then but the robots I guess the Earth uses like giant robots to fight them off or whatever. I'm not sure. I don't know the exact story.
Right. Okay.
But he is very excited about this. But it's just reading interviews with him. He's a good sport because, he really wanted to make Into Mountains of Madness. He really did, and they keep asking him about it. And he realized that, I guess it's because of Prometheus, they decided to finally pull the plug. Wasn't that the story that we talked about a couple of weeks ago on the show?
Because it's too close?
No, because he had said that.
He had
Guillermo del Toro had basically said that when they saw Prometheus come out, it was basically really just very, very similar themes and even very similar events, the beginning of mankind and things like that.
And there is that in the H.P. Lovecraft story. So, and he was, I would have. Now let me ask you guys: would you have welcomed a Del Toro version of The Hobbit?
I was much when I heard it, I was like, oh, he's probably the guy. If you can't get Peter Jackson, Del Toro is probably the next best guy. When they fired him and got Peter Jackson, I was like, good. I think that was probably everyone's reaction. And I like Guillermo del Toro, but it's like if you can't, it's like if they'd have fired Joe Johnston and gotten Spielberg back for Jurassic Park 3. Maybe that's not quite the same example, but it's like it's kind of hard to follow that guy.
Right.
Obviously, that's his bag. Pacific Rim though, the problem with it is, and I love Del Toro's movies, they're going to have to sell that 100% on the visuals and the story because it has got no stars in it. It's got a couple of people you've heard of.
You got people we know, but no one who's a box office draw, though. You're right there.
Not even close. Not even close. Like Ron Perlman, Idris Elba.
It's hard to tell how much currency a movie star has anymore anyway. Especially
for the big ones, though?
Especially in an event movie, I think people go to it more for the event than the star.
Well, have we had any big event movies that have, with no star this year? Maybe there are. I just can't think of any.
Well, maybe not. But what I'm saying is people are drawn to the Avengers not necessarily because Robert Downey Jr. is in it. I think that they're.
Yeah, that might be an interesting conversation about the Avengers. However, had they made Iron Man, with somebody you'd never heard of, would people have gone to see that? Avengers is a little bit different because they had already made all the movies that led up to it.
Take any superhero movie. The guy that's playing Superman is a star. Is that going to be big because he's not a star? Christian Bale wasn't majorly bankable when he.
Star of that.
Right.
Like you've got something. Superman has nothing.
And that's my point, because Superman makes that movie the event, and event pictures just based on their own merits don't necessarily require a star, but that doesn't apply to Del Toro. What you're saying is that nobody really knows much of anything about this property, so a star.
Well, they're going to have to
work
overtime. They're going to have to work overtime to really push this next summer.
Yeah, even if Superman has no one you know of playing Superman, you know who Superman is.
Yeah,
but
that makes it the event.
Right, that makes it the event. Pacific Rim does not have that. That's what I'm saying. It has neither a star or anything that is known about it, whether it's a star or the material or a director. Most people don't know.
You're going to have to take the you're going to have to take the enthusiasm from Comic-Con, like we were talking, what Jamie was saying, and you're going to really have to make that, build on that with this movie. To get the, how shall I say this, to make it a crossover hit, you're going to need to go outside the geek quadrant of that, or it's not going to work. It won't. It will be a dud. I mean...
Yeah.
We've had a lot of failures, John Carter, Cowboys and Aliens, things like that just don't have, they don't have a known audience. Like
right.
Those were both graphic novels that people were, moderately familiar with. Like very few people were, but I can't think of a lot of examples where something had nothing going for it. There's not a lot of totally original stuff with no stars that takes off these days. I can't think of a lot.
Yeah. Okay.
That's true. That's very true.
Well, I mean, I think that. Okay. Well, I think that they're recognizable faces, and I think there's more examples of big event movies without huge stars that are successful than vice versa. I think the ones that tend to tank are the ones with big stars, and then everybody blames it on the big star. I mean, 2012 made a lot of money, but nobody spent $200 million to ever see a John Cusack movie.
True.
That is true, but John Cusack, it's easy to make that argument and say, oh, no one saw it for John Cusack, except John Cusack is in it. So, when people go see the movie,
he is in it.
The movie had something going for it. I mean, it had some people in it going for it,
But people went to see it to see lots of crap blow up in the world end. They didn't go see it for John Cusack.
Yeah, that's true.
He's got a point there. They didn't go see 10,000 BC. They just didn't go see 10,000 BC. So
that's true. Okay.
You gotta have some stars. If you got nothing with the material, you gotta have some stars.
Oh well, that I agree. That's probably good policy.